Every Friday, I have been challenging myself to release a tutorial here on YouTube for a free pattern that I find out in our sewing community. Some patterns are ones I've sewn before, loved, and wanted to revisit. Some are new to me patterns that I hadn't gotten around to sewing yet, but have been wanting to. And some are patterns I never heard of that you all have been sending me. Thank you so much for sending me those patterns. Please continue. I do want to find new patterns that I love too to sew. Today's free pattern is going to be from the designer Lacus. This is called the Eddy bag. I chose this pattern, one, because I love Sylvie, the designer from Lacus Designs. The second reason why I chose this pattern is because when I asked Sylvie about creating a tutorial for this pattern, she sent me so many pictures of her different variations of this pattern. I love that this free pattern has so many options. I'm only going to do one in the video today, but if you wanted to see any of the other ones, please let me know. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the other versions that you can make with this free pattern. So some of the different versions you can make is you can make this a pouch with a zipper top. You can make this a bag with a flap. It can be turned into a crossbody, a wristlet, as well as the pouch. You can make this out of clear vinyl with the zipper for a clear vinyl zipper pouch. Sylvie also sent me pictures of how she has shrunk it down, printed it at 60%, printed at 80%. I think someone even printed it at 125% and made so many different options. At the one she printed at 60%, she used clear vinyl and a cam snap with the flap. It turned out so cute. I love the way it looks. I'm definitely making one of those for myself eventually. If you want to see her versions of this pattern, you would join her Facebook group. I'll have the link in my description, and you can search for the Eddy, or it could be Eddy, I'm not for sure, bag to see all the different versions that she has made as well as others. To get this free pattern, you would need to join her Facebook group. The file for this pattern is listed there in the files section of her Facebook group. I know some people are not on Facebook. I understand. I'm actually considering getting off Facebook myself too, but this pattern is only available in her Facebook group. It's available in the files section. You just download the file. You do not need to do anything on the website. I'm trying to vary with back and forth as to how to get the patterns. Like last week, it was through an email. This week is through Facebook. So for the version I'm making, like I said, it is the flap version. It's super quick and easy. We're going to have a great time sewing this. I'm going to go over the pieces and I'm going to talk about the few changes that I'm making to my version. So I have two flap pieces. This is my exterior piece. My lining piece I do have cut upside down, so that way when they are right sides together and I lift up my flap, the print direction is correct. You can see also that I added two magnetic snaps. I got the placement from the pattern piece. I'm using a cotton canvas print. It is from Jen's Fabrics, and I did interface the pieces with SF101 on my flap, and my two main exterior pieces I did add fleece. On the flat piece, I kept the fleece out of the seam allowance. I didn't worry about it so much with my exterior main panel pieces. The fleece is kept in the seam allowance. I feel like it'll be okay on those pieces. So that is my two flat pieces. I'm actually going to attach one of these tags. This is from Sewing Blurbs. I will attach this to my flap as well and just have it on the side. You're going to have four pieces that look like this. This is going to be my front exterior. I've already attached the magnetic snaps. Again, I use the pattern piece. The pattern piece has an option for a round flap or a squared flap. You will want to make for sure you know which flap you're using before you install your magnetic snaps, because there is two different placements. A placement for the rounded flap, a placement for the squared flap. Also note that you will have darts that you have to cut out at the bottom. I love sewing darts in a bag, and Sylvie has several patterns that let you utilize this feature so you have more depth in the bag, and so it's easier to see inside and it's easier to find things inside when you're looking in them. All the pieces have the SF101. The two exterior front and back pieces have fleece. I'm going to add a tag to my back exterior. This is a cork tag from Heartwood and Todd. I could choose to leave this bag as a pouch. I'm back and forth as if I wanted a pouch or a crossbody. I even might wear it as a sling. I'm undecided. So when I cut the pattern out, I went ahead and cut out the 2 D-ring connectors. You have a pattern piece for it, and you just fold the 2 raw edges to the center. What I would do next is I would go ahead and top stitch all around here, then add my D-ring connectors and fold them in half, place them on the back of the bag, just like the pattern tells me. But instead I want to do something a little different. So what I did was I took out this back piece, this is my back exterior piece, and I cut a piece of webbing. You can place the webbing down as just like the pattern measurements say for your D-ring connector. I did choose to take mine just a little bit lower, not too low, just a little bit, and so I put that in place there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide on a D-ring connector on each side. And now what I'll do is I'll sew a rectangle in the middle and 2 rectangles on the side. So from this side, what I'll do is I'll probably sew in about 1.25 inches and make that first rectangle there. Then I'll come in on the other side and make that same rectangle. Then I will sew down the middle. That will secure these in place so they're not sliding back and forth, but it'll still give plenty of room so it's not caught in my seam allowance. Just a couple different options to have fun with the pattern. I do not think Sylvie will mind that I made those adjustments. She loves to just explore and do new things with patterns, so I think she'll be okay with those little change on that. I had planned on adding this tag on the back, but looking, I don't feel like there's any good spot to add it, so I might add it on the front instead. That seems like a better choice since I do have a couple of things that are going on the back already and I don't want to add any more. So I'll probably center this cork tag here on the front piece. So the first things I'm going to do to get this pattern started is I'm going to take out the exterior flap and I'm going to sew on my tag. When you're sewing in a woven tag, you'll want to make for sure that you have plenty of room to catch the seam allowance. I know the seam allowance in this pattern, that's plenty of room, so I can leave it here against the edge just fine. If you were sewing a bag with a really big seam allowance, you might would even want to offset a little bit so that you could still catch and not lose any of the words. Your placement, it doesn't matter too much. You can place it up high, down low. You could even place it right here. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to choose to place it right here. So I'll just baste this into place. Now that I have that basted into place on the exterior, I'm going to take that lining piece with the snaps, place it right sides together, start sewing here, go all the way around, come up and stop sewing here. I'll leave the top open and then I will turn it right sides out. If you wanted, you could use pinky shears to trim up the seam allowance if you were concerned about the curve looking nice. I don't feel like it'll be a problem, so I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to sew and then turn mine right sides out. Here's how my flap looks. Super cute already. You can see the tag here, and then I used these clips not only to make sure I top stitch it the way I want, but also to compress the seams a little bit. These clips are from Amazon. They're actually just clips you would use if you hang your clothes outside on a clothesline. It does have this rubber or silicone there, I guess you would want to call it, on the end to prevent marks on your clothes. It does the same thing on your fabrics. It does not leave marks like maybe some other clips might. So now that I have it clipped in place, I'm going to sew all around the perimeter with the top stitch, and then I'm going to baste that top close. Make sure you do have your magnetic snaps on before you close your opening. My flap is ready. I'm going to set it aside until it's time to attach it to the back exterior. So now let's go ahead and attach this bar for my crossbody onto it. If you wanted to do the D-ring connectors, completely fine, just whichever method you like best. So I'm going to start sewing at one side first, and I'll just go down. And then I'm going to pivot and I'm going to go over. I'm going to pull out my ruler though before I start sewing, just to make for sure everything's staying in line and to mark how far in I want to sew. That is how the first side looks. Let's go and do that same thing on the other side, making sure that we have the same distance from the side to that first row of stitching, just so it looks even on both sides. I'm just sewing about 1/8 of an inch away on either side of the webbing. Once you have those two rectangles sewn on the ends, go ahead and make for sure that you have your D-rings pulled to those lines of stitching, and then you're just going to sew in between. You don't have to measure that one so much. You want to make for sure it's even down here, but it should be now that you have those two sides anchored, and you'll just do 1/8 of an inch away from the webbing, and then I wouldn't get as close as I could to the D-ring, but get kind of close, maybe no more than 1/4 of an inch away. You want to be able to fold it if you need to move it or if you want to move it. Look at how cute and happy that is. I just love it so much. So that is the back. I still need to add the tag to the front, but I'll do that off camera. You've seen me add a tag lots of times before, so we will just do that off camera. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work on these darts. All you do for the dart is you simply fold it right sides together. I kind of press a little bit down to make that really sharp edge there. So I'll put 2 clips, one on the top, one on the bottom. And then what I like to do is I like to start sewing at the bottom. So I get that cutout matched exactly with the seam allowance. And I'm going to start sewing back stitch. And then I'm going to keep sewing, making sure even whenever that cutout is past my needle, that it's staying completely in line with my seam allowance. I'm not watching my needle, I'm watching that seam allowance. And then I keep sewing until I run out of fabric to sew on. So here's where that cutout ends, but here's actually where my stitches end. You don't stop sewing there, you keep sewing with that same seam allowance until it veers off the edge. Let's open that up. Look at how that little dart just really helps bring out the bag, makes it have that really nice 3D effect. If you wanted, you could trim your dart, but I really wouldn't trim it myself personally. It's a small seam allowance and it won't be too much, and it'll help us whenever we're nesting, I feel like, at the end, so I'm not worried about trimming that down. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to sew all the darts on both the exterior and the lining pieces. For your lining, we're not doing anything to it. We're leaving it simple, but there is plenty of options to do. You could add a slip pocket, you could add a zipper pocket, you could put a tag in here, you could add anything you wanted to, maybe a clear vinyl ID pocket for your driver's license, whatever you want. But the lining for this one that I'm doing today is going to be kept simple. I'm not putting anything on it. So once I sew the darts onto the lining and the exterior, add my tag, we're ready to put everything together. I have all the darts sewn onto the bag. And now what I need to do is I need to attach this flap to the back. We're going to place it right sides together, so you should be looking at your snaps. Go ahead and center the flap onto the back at that top edge. I'm going to clip it in place. I'll double check my measurements before I start sewing, and then I'm just going to base this flap into place. The designer tells you how big of a gap you should have between the flap and this raw edge of your back exterior. That's very important because whenever we're sewing this later with the front, we don't want to catch the flap at all in that final row of stitching, because then we couldn't open the flap. So just double check according to the pattern measurements that everything is right. If it is, go ahead and baste your flap into place. Once you have that flap based in place, pull out your front exterior and let's just place them right sides together, and let's start matching it up. All the sides, all the edges should match up. When you come down to the dart, you're going to nest, or at least I am. I'm going to nest those seams. If you wanted to butterfly them, you could, but there's just no benefit for me to do it. I'm going to nest mine. Since I have the fleece in my seam lines, mine's a little bulky, so I'm going to put on that big clip. 1, so it doesn't break my smaller plastic clips, and 2, so it can kind of help compress that seam a little while before I sew it. This one you can see is a little off. It's not meeting it perfectly, so I want to try to shift them to make them match a little bit more. I love to have perfectly matching darts when I look at the bottom of the bag. If it's not matching perfectly, it's not going to affect the end of the bag. It's just those small little details that I like to see. So we have it all clipped together. You can see there's the inside, everything's right sides together. What we're going to do is we're going to start sewing here, back stitch, go all the way around with that seam allowance given in the pattern. When you get to those darts, make for sure you're kind of holding them flat so you can sew over them nicely, and try your best to keep them in line so that you can have that perfect finish on the bottom. Here is how the exterior looks. I'm not going to do any trimming of my seams. I'm just going to go ahead and turn this right sides out. My seams are pretty good there at the bottom for those darts, not too bad at all. I will take the time to clip all the seams out, but I'm going to wait until after everything's complete with the bag before I do that. So this exterior is complete now. We're going to sew the lining the same way. I've already sewn it, so I'm going to show it to you. I started sewing with that seam allowance given the pattern here at the top. I did grade the seam allowance just a slight bit bigger coming towards the bottom. Once I got past the darts on both sides, I backstitched and then broke the stitches, so I had an opening here at the bottom. So this is how I can turn the bag. You could also do a drop-in lining for this one if you wanted to as well. So I'm going to leave this lining wrong sides out. I'm going to take my exterior and just put it inside there. It doesn't matter which way it goes because the lining doesn't have any pockets or anything on it. If yours does and you have a preference, definitely make note of that. It's really important to make for sure that you use the same seam allowance at the top of the exterior and the lining so that they fit nicely together. Match up your seams first. You can choose to butterfly or nest. If you nest, you will have a little more bulk on one side, which is what I'm doing. I'm just choosing to do that because there is fleece on the exterior, but not on your lining. You're going to have to smush everything in. Don't get worried that things aren't going to fit. It's just because the lining doesn't have the fleece on it, so the exterior feels a little bulky, but it will fit around. Just take your time to ease it all around in at the top. Here is how it looks. What you're going to do is you're just going to sew around the perimeter. Super easy. Use the seam allowance given the pattern, sew all around, and then we're going to pull it through this opening here in the bottom. I'm going to take a risk and go ahead and close up this lining before I top stitch. Usually I wait, but I think I can just roll out the seams okay around the top after I close this. If not, I'll be complaining about it. So I just tucked in the edges and sewed along that opening to close it up. Now let's push it down in the exterior. Oh my gosh, this is just such a cute little shaped bag. I love it so much. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of separate those seams and roll them. I want to see only the exterior from the outside, not the lining. So this is when you would, like if you didn't want to be lazy like me, if you would have left that lining open, you would have been able to put your hand in there and push and separate really good. I feel like it's okay. I'm not too worried about it. It's going just fine. Have a little bit of bulk in the corners here and these seams where I did not keep the fleece out of my seam allowance. If that bothers you, definitely keep it out. I was just being lazy. For this flap, I'm going to pull really good. I'm not going to clip any, but whenever I'm sewing, I'll sew with that flap up and I'll just kind of finger press to make sure that is laying really nice. So let's go ahead and turn this whole thing right sides out so that I can, or wrong sides out? Yeah, let's flip this inside out. That's the word I'm looking for. So let's flip this inside out so that I can top stitch from the exterior. And just make sure everything looks really good on the exterior. I'm pushing and pulling. Okay, slide this under your needle. Let's start sewing here on the back. I can feel that fleece, the seam, that's fine. I'm just going to keep a really, like kind of a little bit of a pull on here so that I can make sure that I have this seam going down and that I'm getting a really nice top stitch all along the exterior. I'm doing this top stitching just 1/8 of an inch away, mainly because I really want to make sure I tack that seam allowance down and that it lays really nice. I'm going to turn this right sides out now and just kind of press the corners a little bit and change my camera angle, and we'll see how cute this looks. I don't know if I've ever sewn a cuter bag. What is it with me and my love of food with smiley faces? I don't know, but this print, this pattern is just such happiness for me. I love the tag here on the top. Now, I do think I could have put it a little bit lower, but I think it's cute there. I like that. Love how I added the connectors on the back, because this will allow me to wear this as a hip bag, a sling, or a crossbody, or I can just use it as a pouch, no problems. It doesn't get in the way, so I love that. Flap opens, fits easily, no problems at all with the fit. Look at how open that is. Just perfect. It could easily fit a water bottle. You think it's really small, but that has plenty of room in it for sure. I have a thread I have to trim up. Tag, I sewed it on a little crooked, okay, but I really like this pattern. It's a free pattern and there's so many options. You can do clear vinyl, you could do a zipper pouch, you could change the size by printing it out at a different percentage. Right now this is 100%, but you could print it smaller or a little bit bigger, change things up, have a square flap. So many amazing options for this free pattern from Lacus Designs. This is the Eddy or the Eddy. My prints are from Jen's Fabric. The webbing is from the Emporium. I'm pretty sure that her shop is not open right now because she is heading to Washington to teach at an expo and she is vending there. But this webbing usually is on retail on her shop. Tags are from Sewing Blurbs and the cork tag is from Heartwood and Hod. I will put Sylvie's Facebook group in the description. You do need to get the file from her Facebook group, but I will try to make for sure I do an even mix of patterns from Facebook and patterns from other ways if you're not on Facebook. Thank you so much for watching another tutorial of mine. I'm really enjoying these Frugal Fridays. It's reminding me of how much fun a free pattern is because you just get to enjoy and explore without too much risk. I'm so thankful for designers giving us these free patterns. It's such a fun way to get to know their writing style and get to sew up a free pattern. Super cute. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope today you have an amazing day.